back in 1982, a corporate nightmare unfolded that really should have destroyed one of America's most trusted brands. But it didn't. Instead, it became the absolute gold standard for crisis management. So this isn't just a history lesson, it's a playbook. We're going to break down exactly how Johnson & Johnson turned a total catastrophe into a masterclass in leadership.
First, you have to understand just how high the stakes were. In early 1982, Tylenol wasn't just another pain reliever. It was an absolute juggernaut. It owned a whopping 37% of the market. It was a name in every household, a name that meant safety and trust. To put it simply, they were on top of the world.
And then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Over the course of just a few days, 7 people in the Chicago area were dead. The cause was just unthinkable. Cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules.
The reaction from the outside world was immediate and absolutely brutal. Wall Street, the media, advertising experts, you name it, they were all writing Tylenol's obituary. The consensus was crystal clear. Tylenol was done for. There was just no coming back from this.
So let's get into the weeds of how this all went down. In late September 1982, Tylenol went from a trusted family remedy to a public poison, literally overnight. The brand wasn't just in a little bit of trouble, it was staring down the barrel of complete and total extinction.
The speed at which this thing unraveled is just terrifying. Think about it. At 6 a.m., a medical examiner confirms the poison. A mere 3 hours later, he's on live television telling everyone, do not take Tylenol. By the next day, 6 people are dead. And then, at midnight, the mayor of Chicago literally interrupts national television, wearing a formal evening gown, by the way, to announce a 7th victim and ban the product citywide. This wasn't a slow burn. It was an absolute firestorm.
And that chaos brings us to the very first page in our crisis playbook. When a crisis hits with this kind of force, the single most critical asset you have is time. The leadership at Johnson & Johnson knew that every single second of hesitation would cost them trust they might never, ever get back.
You know, this quote, it captures such a raw human moment. When the medical examiner first called Johnson & Johnson, their gut instinct was defensive. Do you really have to name us? But when he pushed back, they didn't have an answer. And in that critical moment, they made a pivotal choice. They didn't fight him. They didn't obstruct. They just stepped aside and let the truth get out.
Now this is what leadership looks like in action. David Collins, the chairman of the Tylenol subsidiary, didn't just lock himself in a war room 900 miles away. No, he got on a helicopter and flew directly into the heart of the crisis in Chicago. His reason was simple. This thing was so important, we couldn't rely on secondhand reports. He chose to be present, not distant. He chose action over observation.
All right, let's move on to the decision that would become the moral center of this entire story. This is play number 2, and it's arguably the most important one in the whole book. This is the moment Johnson & Johnson had to make a choice between their bottom line and their customers' lives.
This chart really lays out the stark choice they faced. All the conventional wisdom at the time was screaming for a limited, surgical recall. Control the message, minimize the financial bleeding. But J&J did the exact opposite. They went for a full national recall, they chose radical transparency, and they put public safety above everything else. A decision that cost them an incredible $100 million. And remember, that's in 1982 dollars. So what does a $100 million decision look like? Well, it looks like this. 31 million. That's how many bottles they pulled from every single shelf in America. It was the first mass recall in U.S. history, a completely unprecedented move that left Wall Street totally speechless.
Okay, but a recall, no matter how huge, only deals with the immediate danger, right? It doesn't actually solve the root problem. So the next play isn't about PR, it's about engineering a real, tangible solution to rebuild that shattered trust.
And this is what they came up with. Something we now take completely for granted. A triple-layer protection system. First, they glued the box flap shut. Then, they added that plastic wrap around the cap. And finally, the game changer. That foil safety seal over the bottle's opening. It was a simple, visible promise to every customer. If this seal is broken, do not use this product. But here's a really crucial piece of the story. This amazing innovation wasn't just dreamed up in a few frantic weeks. The truth is, Johnson & Johnson had been thinking about these kinds of safety measures for years. So why didn't they do it sooner? Well, it came down to cost. As one lawyer later put it, it costs more to do these things. The tragedy, horrible as it was, forced their hand to finally do what they already knew was right.
So they did all this, the huge recall, the invention of new packaging. The big question is, did any of it actually work? Let's look at the results and see how this whole story can be translated into an actionable playbook for any leader who might be facing a crisis today.
I mean, the numbers really do speak for themselves. The brand fell off a cliff, from a dominant 37% market share all the way down to just 7%. It was, for all intents and purposes, dead. But then, within just 1 year of the recall and launching the new packaging, they had clawed their way back to 30%. They flooded the airways with messages, sent out coupons, and personally reassured America that Tylenol was safe again. They didn't just survive. They pulled off what everyone thought was an impossible comeback, fueled entirely by rebuilding trust. But the playbook wasn't finished. In 1986, incredibly, tragedy struck again. A 23-year-old woman died after taking a capsule from a bottle that had all 3 safety seals perfectly intact. Somehow, a killer had found a way around their solution. Johnson & Johnson made another incredibly tough call. They stopped selling capsules altogether, switching to solid tamper-proof caplets. It was a painful lesson that even your best solution might not be perfect forever.
So, when we boil this whole thing down, what can we take away for our own playbook? It really comes down to 4 key rules. 1. Speed matters, period. 2. Transparency wins. The truth is going to come out eventually, so you might as well get ahead of it. 3. Action speaks louder than words. A $100 million recall sends a message that no press release ever could. And finally, the big one, the foundation of it all. Put people before profit. It's not just the right thing to do, it's the only way to build trust that lasts.
And that brings it all back to you. I want you to think about your own organization, your own leadership style. When the pressure is really on, what's your gut reaction? Is it to clamp down, to manage the message, to control the narrative? Or is it to open up and share the truth, even when it's ugly?
So let's end with the ultimate question this whole case forces us to ask ourselves. If your product, the very thing your company makes and sells, killed 7 innocent people tomorrow, what would your company really do? Your honest answer to that question says everything you need to know about your company's true values. Because in a crisis, your values are all you have left.